The Legal Mindset Corner will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our 24/7 virtual receptionist team.
I've been utilizing Answering Legal for my firm since 2015, and truth be told, it was a game changer for me. I can be anywhere, and I'm getting my phones answered by Answering Legal. A strategic partner, as I call Answering Legal, provides a great reward. What is that reward? It's time. Time for whatever I want to do. As a private practitioner, I would highly recommend Answering Legal to other private practitioners. Now, every call goes answered.
Welcome back to the Legal Mindset Corner, sponsored by our friends at Answering Legal. I'm Cynthia Sharp, along with your co-host, Rebecca Howlett, and we are devoted to exploring a range of topics that impact lawyer well-being, including mental health concerns, cultivating resilience, and more. On today's episode, we will be examining lawyer suicide and those struggling with mental illness while the proverbial band plays on. Joining us today is our special guest, Stephanie Mitchell Hughes. Now, Stephanie, who we've been such delighted to meet, is an attorney, a mental health innovator, and workplace disruptor. She's assistant director of NAMI in Franklin County, Ohio. She writes, speaks, and presents workshops on living with depression and suicidal thoughts, how to navigate disruption, cultivating resilience, near and dear to our heart, and workplace wellness. Stephanie's work primarily appears in online publications, including the Good Men Project and Medium. Stephanie shared her journey through life's hard places at TedxColumbus. Welcome, Stephanie, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I really am always honored for opportunities to meet people and share parts of my story. Storytelling saves lives. It does.
That's so cool to hear you're a fellow storyteller. I always say I'm obsessed with storytelling. We knew you were a kindred spirit. Here we go. And on that note, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and what really led to your mental health advocacy and lawyer suicide advocacy as well?
Well, I've lived with depression and what I call generous episodes of suicidal thinking, suicidal ideation now for probably about 45 years. That's been since I was 15 years old. And the thing that really I started telling my story because for most of that time, I never really talked about or shared any of the challenges that I had with mental illness until starting in 2006, I discovered that I had been deeply depressed for at least a decade and I didn't know it. And there were two things that happened in 2014 after Robin Williams died by suicide. I thought, maybe it's just time for me to start telling my story. And then the other thing is that I looked around the profession in particular, and I thought it doesn't really look that much different than it did when I arrived in 1988. And so at that point, by 2014, I had been around for 26 years. And I felt like as an older attorney, for me, the die is cast. But what about the other lawyers who are out there? And so what I started doing with my work and have wanted to do and will continue doing is to disrupt stigma, shame associated with mental illness, associated with suicide within 3 communities, including the legal profession, because we just keep running around behaving as if the emperor is not wearing clothes. But in the meantime, we have people who are of different ages who are dying by suicide. And we have other lawyers who are really struggling. And the other thing, and this is something that I do say when to audiences, whether it's a law firm or an organization or what have you, with lawyers, the thing that I say is buckle up because Gen Z is now beginning to enter the profession. And they are not. The expectation is that there is going to be space made for them to take care of themselves. And they are going to demand that space. And I know that I've got personal experience with it because I have my youngest child, for reasons that I still don't understand, decided to go to law school. She is in her third year. She is looking for a job. And I have, I've lived with her. I'm like, okay, she and others like her are coming to a legal employer near you. And so if and the only thing I can say to also when people sort of, groan about it is, remember, we raised them to be the way that they are. So if there's anyone to blame in this, you want to blame somebody, you just go look in the mirror because as my father told me once, in reference to my daughter, you created this situation. And so, and I'm like, well, but in my defense, I learned everything that I learned from you. And so therefore, you can just go look in the mirror because you created the situation that enabled me to create the situation that we're dealing with today with my daughter, who is really, really actually a delightful person, a hard worker, but she's a Gen Z and they're just like, look, we're done with this and we're going to change everything that we can. So,
Yeah.
So you've seen then what you've faced in the legal profession. You know if things stay the same, what your daughter will face. So what do you think some of the primary stressors are in our profession that contribute to the high risk of suicide among lawyers?
I think that the thing that's really challenging with balancing lawyer well-being and also the demands of the profession is the fact that when we're in law school, we're taught that, and I don't know how we do this any other way, but we're taught that we are to be heard, but never ever seen. We are taught to put our person, who we are as individuals, whatever it is that we are dealing with, that is never ever relevant, should never be brought into the equation. And so when you are, because of the nature of the work that we have to do, when you are simply told, put yourself on the shelf, only be heard but never seen, and then you're held to these extraordinarily high standards because you carry a person's liberty, you carry a company's continued, your clients, you carry their burdens on your shoulders and you want to do a good job for them. And within all of that and all of the demands that are placed upon us, all of that contributes to where we are right now. So it becomes really very easy to pretend that the emperor is not wearing clothes. The other part of it is, think about when what we do is so tied to our ability, to our minds, to the mind. Pretty much everything that we do is in the mind. Mentally, we are constantly thinking 50 steps ahead. We have to think 50 steps ahead. We've got to mentally explore all of these different avenues for resolving our clients' problems, their issues. And so when you're living in your head and you can't talk about having a mental illness because mental illness is a brain disease. And so it's like, well, we can't have you have anything wrong with your mind, because if you have something wrong with your mind, you are a liability to us, when quite the opposite is true. Because if I don't deal with it and we continue to run around and pretend like the emperor is wearing clothes, then, as we have been doing, then people are going to self-medicate. They're going to drink. They're going to use drugs. When isn't it, and wouldn't it just simply be much easier to step back and ask, how is it that we can create an environment that encourages people, the people who work for us, to take care of themselves? I think that there is a sense amongst employers that if we acknowledge this as being true, then it's going to affect our profits. It's going to affect our reputation. It's going to affect productivity. When there is at least one study that shows that the opposite is true. And one study is with the profession itself. There are other studies that have been done with other industries that show that productivity is not impacted when you take care, adversely impacted when you take care of well-being. So,
Yeah, and encourage authenticity, because
right.
that's when, if we're denying ourselves and who we are by just being either an asset of the firm or a machine and not expected to have these feelings, then certainly it's going to all bottle up.
Oh, exactly. And we see it. We see it. I did, recently did, and you guys know this, I did the CLE, put on your own oxygen mask first. And in there, I highlight 3 stories of lawyer suicides. And these individuals were partners, high achieving people, continuing to push through despite the way that they were feeling. And it's like, they're not by themselves. These just happen to be the people who we are reading about. There are many others that are out there. Their stories just haven't been told yet. And we don't want to wait for other stories or their stories to be told. We can do something. We're not when we can do something about it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that we were so drawn to you, Stephanie, is that you're so committed to actively changing the culture around this. When you were talking about, we're really trained to, to kind of disown ourselves and our needs, our daily care needs. It reminded me of when I was in law school. It was actually one of my mentors, a professor of mine who I was very close to. And another student had gone to them, and because they said they were really struggling, and they said, there just aren't enough hours. Like, I can't prepare for class, read all the cases I need to, and also sleep. And the professor's response to them was, "You'll figure it out." That has haunted me from the moment I heard about it. And this is somebody I really respect and look up to. But, to your point, like this training, this conditioning, it starts very early on, even in the legal education. And one thing I did want to ask, especially given your experience with NAMI, one thing that we're often asked, obviously we understand that being a lawyer is inherently very risky to your health and well-being. But one of the questions we get asked is there a particular area of law or practice area that is more risky than another? Can you speak to that?
I don't think so, because I think that it's all, at the end of the day, it's the same. Lawyers get such a bad rap. And I think largely because we speak English, but we speak a completely different language. And I think that regardless of where you work and what you do, as long as you are doing work connected to the profession, there is that stress. And there's also such an emphasis on perfection. This huge emphasis when we are human. We are merely human. And we have to be given space. Nobody's saying that we need to, start making s'mores around a campfire and singing Kumbaya. No one, I'm not saying that. But there has to be, just like you recognize the hard work, there also has to be a recognition of our humanity. And there has to be somewhere within organizations space for that. I have a Gen Z, but I also have a millennial. The millennials they are expecting transformation, but they're polite about it. The Gen Z, they're just simply not. I mean, they're just not. And so my son was just like, look, you know what? There's no way that I'm going to law school. Absolutely not. But he has another job and he works in Chicago and he travels a lot and he works really, really hard. And so he recently when he started his new job in Chicago, I said, well, tell me about your office. Tell me about the space, because they can work essentially from anywhere. And so he starts telling me about it. And then he goes on to list that they have a nap room. They have a video game room. They have a deck area where you can go up and sit down and kind of decompress. And I was just like, you have a nap room? I'm like, people are actually taking naps at work? And he's like, well, yeah. I said, well, when do you get to go to the nap room? Well, if you're tired and you just want to lay down and rest for a few minutes. I'm like, well, when do you go to the video game room? Same thing. And I can't even imagine any setting, any legal employer. I don't care whether it is a governmental entity, a nonprofit, or a law firm, where people are going to have nap rooms and video games. You might get like a deck area where you can go and take in a deep breath. But that's just like unheard of. But to him, I mean, he was just talking about it as if it was just, this is how it is.
And I bet the productivity is sky high and they have a bunch of happy people. And there's, besides, another benefit to the company is retention. Who would want to leave a place like that?
Right, exactly. It's just, I mean, I'm like, I'm in this world where we're like pound, 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 fall out until you're ready, fall out.
Yeah, I remember my first job with I worked full time through law school. And so one of my jobs was a part-time job, was with a law school professor and a tax professor. And my very first day at work, he said, this is how we operate. If it's not perfect, it's wrong. And that's really the standard I operated under for 40 years. And it's more than that's just the mindset that goes on.
It is exhausting. And if perfection, or as close to perfection as you can get, is the standard, then there has to be space given for people to rest and for people to take care of themselves. It just has to be done.
Because otherwise, we know what happens.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know why we have to wait until we see yet another crash or another eruption to decide, oh, I think we better go do something. No, it's long past time. And you have to figure out how you're going to do this. As an organization, it is better to do it. And we all know this. It is better to do this when you can have a very thoughtful and intentional process for deciding what your well-being program is going to look like and how you're going to encourage lawyers to take care of themselves.
No, we can't. And most of us came into the profession because we want to help people. So to that point, we want to help our colleagues. So, are there warning signs for us to look at that may indicate that one of our colleagues is at risk for suicide?
You know, that is, I don't know that that is really the right question. If it is a question, it's a question that should be asked much further down the line. And the reason that I have come to believe that is because when a person dies by suicide, friends, family, coworkers, people who knew them, I should have known. And then you take on that guilt of, I could have helped them, I could have saved them. Why didn't I know? It is my responsibility. And it's like, no, as a person who has lived with suicidal ideation for as long as I did, I managed to get through over a decade of living with the mental illness and just kept going right through that. The question is, why wouldn't I tell you that I am suicidal?
Wow.
That's the question. And that to me is a much more global question. Because what happens is, and the thing that I say, I wrote an article about this, it's called Wrestling um, with Suicide and Depression Alone in the Dark. And it's an article that I wrote in response to the unfortunate suicide of Stephen Boss Twitch, Ellen's former DJ. And I thought, well, why am I not going to tell you that I'm suicidal? And I listed the reasons that I may not tell someone that I'm suicidal. I may not tell you that I'm suicidal because I don't trust you. I may not tell you that I am suicidal because you don't trust me to manage my own mental illness. I may not tell you that I'm suicidal because of certain things, that decisions and choices that you may make. You may call someone and then tell them I'm a danger to myself. I'm a danger to other people. And because you don't want me to die by suicide, you don't want me to take my life, which is clearly legitimate and understandable. The thing that people have to understand, other thing though, and this is a hard thing to say, and it was a hard thing to write. If I have decided that I am going to take my own life, there is not one thing that you can do to stop me. And that is hard. I say that and I wrote that because I just want the people who are left behind wrestling and struggling with this, to not blame themselves and to understand that the decision to take one's own life is based upon a desire to cut off the tremendous pain that we have, those of us who have decided or attempted to take our own lives, to die by suicide, to end our lives in that way, to cut off that pain that we feel, the tremendous pain that we are in. And the idea and notion that we are, because we live with a mental illness, are such a burden that others' lives would be better off if we were not here. And I know that some people who have never walked that out, that sounds odd and strange and misguided and a whole host of other things. But to those of us who have walked this out or white knuckled our way through, it is about cutting off the pain. Mm-hmm. The thing is that I may not tell you that I am suicidal because I love you, because you have your own problems, because I don't want you to get upset. I don't want to stress you out. I may not tell you that I'm suicidal because I don't want you trying to stop me. If we have time, I'll tell you a brief story. In 2015, I was in the DC cast of This Is My Brave. This Is My Brave brings people together to tell their stories in whatever way about living with or being affected by a mental illness. And there was a woman who was in my cast whose father, she told the story of her own father who had attempted to take his own life 6 times. And several of those times, she and her mother, she happened to be at home with her mother, and she was younger, still at home, and they stopped him. Somehow someone in the family stopped him. The 7th time, he completed his suicide. And for years, and her story was for all these years, I was just really fixated on this because I kept thinking to myself, if I had been there, if only I could have stopped him. That was something over the years that he decided that he wanted to do. And it's painful. But when a person dies by suicide, in my opinion, it speaks to the level of pain that they are in.
So it sounds like that where we can best help people and help ourselves is to really developing and helping others develop resilience early on before these
Right.
ideations begin. So do you
Right.
have any suggestions along that line?
Yes. So that is why I strongly believe that in order to help everyone, including those of us who are living with a mental illness, don't want to disclose our condition, living with suicidal ideation, don't want to disclose that, is to create spaces where we are shown and told that it is okay to take care of ourselves. You know, at NAMI Franklin County, our staff is we're somewhat a little bit unusual. It wasn't intentional the way that this turned out, but we're a little unusual. But one of the things that we do is we have a therapist who comes in, and she works with our staff collectively. We're a very, very small staff, but she works with our staff collectively, and we can see her on our own, one-on-one, if that is what we choose to do. That type of work only happens in a situation where there's a lot of respect and trust and space given to have that type and establish and create those types of very intimate connections. It doesn't have to be that way at a large law firm or what have you. One of the things that I think, and I've talked about this before, if you want to create a well-being program, the first question you have to ask yourself is the question that any employer needs to ask themselves if they want to begin to take a shift in the tone and atmosphere of their organization. And that is, do your employees trust you? Not do you trust them? But do your employees trust you? Because if trust does not exist, if the workforce is toxic, people are not going to trust you, and they will not believe you if you try to go in and begin implementing these things, even if they're very, very small incremental changes. The other thing is you need to take an inventory of the leadership of your organization. The leadership sets the tone. So if you're going to begin to implement some things, there's some shifts, some changes that you want to make, regardless of whether they're huge or small. Leadership goes first. They set the example, they set the tone. And then the other thing is look for allies. You can look around. There are law firms like Reed Smith that are looking at and are implementing well-being practices within their organizations. Talk to them, ask them, work in tandem with them, ask them how they do it. because now they're into, I think, maybe the 3 or 4 years of doing this work. And I'm sure that there are lessons that they have had to learn and things that they would make change or do differently or what have you. Work with people who are expert at creating these types of programs. Bring them in and work with them and ask them how you can create something that will fit your organization.
Yeah.
You've got to, there's going to be some digging, and you got to be willing sometimes to pull stuff out up and out by the root. But at the end of the day, you will benefit. One of the things that has really been alarming to me, and this is something I just shake my head and when I read about it and hear about it, because I don't understand it. And there's this whole emphasis on within the profession, okay, the pandemic is over now. And so therefore everybody's got to come back in, and we need everybody in the office 4 days a week at least. And we need everybody we're just going to go back to business as usual. Wrong, 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 wrong. Read the room. Please read the room. If you had 1, 2, 3 years to see how staff was going to perform working remotely, if there is not a problem with that, if people did what they were supposed to do, if their productivity increased, why change it? To me, that is a freebie. It doesn't require really major shifts or changes in anything. Why are you having them come back into the office if that is not what they have chosen to do or will work better for them? And so that goes to, do you trust your employees? If I am doing my work, never missed a meeting, never missed a court date, here doing depositions, doing all the things that I would ordinarily do, why do you need to now all of a sudden see me 4 days a week? Why? You don't trust me. And if you don't trust me, if that's the reason, then why on earth, goes back to what I said first, should I trust you? So we've got to create a space. We have got to create space. And there are other organizations out there like the Institute on Wellbeing in Law, treasure trove of an organization. Maybe there are opportunities for a firm, for an agency to work with them, to bring them in and begin working first with their senior staff and taking it, go to their iWill's conference. iWill's next conference, it's virtual, is coming up in January. Sign up, register, send people for that. The tools are small, but they are there. And I feel very strongly, if you've got to help people. And you know what? There are going to be some of us, if people choose to be employers, choose to begin implementing and trying to start doing this, there are going to be those of us, and I would be one of them, who you will have to literally drag out of your office and say, you're leaving for 2 weeks. But that is because I am a dinosaur at this point. And I am completely ingrained. I have been just absolutely ingrained. And as one person put it, right before I started my first year, there was a third-year student who said, you will never ever think the same when you leave. And I just thought, I'm going to pay $100,000 to be brainwashed. Well, I've been brainwashed. I've been conditioned, all of that, to grind and grind and grind away and keep grinding through all of it. And it's like, why?
But you know what,
So-
Stephanie? Dinosaurs are resilient. We still
and
got
that is
their
true.
ancestors. We still got their ancestors around today.
That is-
we got the crocodiles. We got the little daddy long legs. We got birds. So you know what? We're here to stay.
Yeah, and and that is true. That is true. That is very true. So, and bring the dinosaurs in, because I'm like, I don't have anything to lose by telling my story. And as my mother puts it, as she shakes her head, You're just telling your business all over the internet. Someone's going, what are people going to think of you? And I'm like, I do everything intentionally. And at this point, I really don't care. So, this has been my experience. I'm going to share it. And I'm hoping that we can be disruptive.
Well,
I
we
hope
love
we
hearing
can.
about your experience, about your ideas of like, look, we trust before disruption. It has to be that trust established. But
Mhm.
now we've got people out there, our colleagues, who are still suffering in silence and they're not reaching out for support. So what is your final message to these folks?
You are not by yourself. You are not by yourself. I am out here fighting this fight every single day. And if you need support, go to NAMI. I don't say go to NAMI because I work for NAMI, because I served on NAMI's board. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. There's a national NAMI, and there are state and affiliate local NAMIs all over the country. And NAMI provides services, support services, advocacy, and education at no charge. There are support groups at NAMI. So if you don't feel that you have the space or the room and you're out there by yourself, first of all, remember you're not alone. But the other thing is reach out in spaces that are designed to help people who have a mental illness. And also, there are doctors in communities. In New York, there is a doctor who I did a presentation with a few years ago named Dr. Fritz Gillette, and he works with lawyers. Didn't start out doing that, but he just somehow eventually. So he's not an outlier. There are places. The other thing is there's the Lawyers Depression Project. It's peer based. You can call in, and there are monthly calls, and you can call in. It's confidential, and you can listen or participate, but people share how they are doing. It is a space because I believe that if you can talk about, and once you get this out of your head, it has those thoughts lose their power.
Mm.
And one of the things actually that I have been contemplating is figuring out how just to get together with a small group of lawyers for lunch. Let's just get together and have a conversation. Maybe they do have a mental illness. Maybe they're struggling with anxiety. Maybe not. Maybe they just want to talk and have connection.
Which is the number one thing that protects us from being traumatized.
Exactly.
Thank you so
Exactly.
much for being here today and sharing your story.
Thanks for
with us,
inviting me.
Stephanie. Cindy and I both, this is a topic that is very near and close to both of our hearts. We've both lost family members to suicide. So we just so appreciate you coming today and sharing your story with us and being such an advocate for change within the profession. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to come. And like I said, it is always a privilege to share. And
thank you
I'm
so
hoping for
much.
change.
And you do it so well.
Well, thank
If
you.
you haven't had a chance to explore the services offered by Answering Legal, now's the time. While you're at it, check out the information that we offer for free at legalburnout.com. This is Cindy Sharp and my co-host Becky Howlett. And until we meet again, just breathe.
Yes, breathe.